to then make our opinions.
Oh, so you're saying so you would look at a scientific survey and say, wow, that big husky dude who swam against the women, turns out he was a lot faster than all those little women, and therefore I conclude that men competing against women in a women's sport is unjust.
No, what you should do is you should be like, hey, okay, how do we realize if, like, okay, I don't know, should trans women compete with real women? I don't know. Do they have an unfair advantage by doing so?
I love that you slipped there and you said real women.
Well, biological women. Okay. Yeah.
What happens when you get a common sense conservative like Michael Knowles debating against 3 no common sense women? Well, you get a pretty entertaining debate where Michael Knowles completely schools them on the issue of transgenderism. Let's see how this goes down on the Whatever podcast.
Kind of had some thoughts on this on your previous appearances. When it comes to feminism, obviously that's typically advocacy for equality, advocacy for women. I think it's important when we're talking about that to, again, define our terms. So as a nod to the Daily Wire and Matt Walsh, what is a woman?
You're going to hate me for this one, Michael.
Lay it on.
But before I have Michael respond to you, I want all of you to respond. Why don't we have Pixie go, then Farah, and then Jasmine. Go ahead.
A woman is a person who acts and is perceived as our societal perception of a woman.
That's at least half of it.
Farah?
I'd like to do more research on this topic before publicizing an opinion. Veto.
Are you joking? That's really your answer?
That is my answer as of now.
Hey,
come on,
so
Farah,
even if you're not going to reason about it, let's just talk from your own personal prejudices and stuff. Come on, just between us gals.
Just between
us gals. That's
we can talk after the show.
What?
But I like to thoroughly think
even
out
Shia LaBeouf wants you to.
I like to thoroughly think out my opinions before publicizing them and platforming them.
You don't have a hunch? I bet you have a hunch of what a woman is.
I didn't say I don't have a hunch,
What's
but that
your
doesn't
hunch?
mean I want to.
She's being a freaking coward here. We all know it doesn't take a rocket scientist or a biologist or what have you to explain what you think a woman is or the definition of a woman. It's just, I'm assuming she has a different opinion than what her lefty friends and her lefty fans, whatever it is that this girl does right here. She's trying to be politically correct. And so she doesn't want to be brave and just say, well, I think a woman is this. Like, who says that? Who gets asked, what do you think a woman is? And they'll go, well, I like to do more research. Like, what research? You're literally a woman.
Too dangerous to venture an answer these days. Okay.
Do you have a hunch?
Yeah.
I would take kind of Pixie's view. I think women can be, I don't think trans women and biological women are the same, but I don't think trans women are men either. Like, they're, you can have an umbrella term for women and have both trans women and biological women under it without realizing that, without also saying that they're exactly the same and they have all the same issues and everything's the same.
If they're neither men nor women, what are they?
They are women. I said that, but I would say they're a part of the umbrella of woman.
Okay, not a part of the umbrella of man.
They are because they're biological men.
So they're both.
You can be a trans man or a biological man, or you can be a trans woman and a biological woman. So depending on how you're looking at it, if you're looking at biology, they're not the same.
Can you though? Can your identity be different? Your metaphysical identity be different from
your biological identity can definitely be different than your social identity. Yeah.
How?
Easy. When this goes back to the whole chromosomes argument, but like, you didn't check any of our chromosomes or biology before calling us a woman, right?
No, I think there are enough indicators.
Enough indicators, but you base those indicators on like appearance. So obviously,
all
our
of my perception.
Yeah.
You look like women, you walk like women, you smell like women. I think you're women.
That's her point. It's a performance, and you're basing it off
the secondary sex characteristics is what you're basing them on, and people can change their secondary sex.
Your bodies is what I'm basing it on.
Which you can change that.
But I'm not sure that you can actually, because I think what's here at the basis of it is a Gnostic idea that you can separate your soul and your body. And I know we don't like to use the word soul anymore, so we'll say your identity, man, or whatever, but that you can separate that from your body. And I just don't think you can. I think a woman is the sort of person who isn't a man. I think that's the basic definition of a woman.
What's a man then?
A man is the sort of person who isn't a woman.
How did you know we were women?
Because you look like women.
Okay.
And you sound like women, and when I talk to you, you give the impression that you're women.
So if a really good passing trans woman is here and you were mistaken?
Then I would be mistaken, but he would not be a woman.
No, but my point is...
Yeah, no, exactly. He would be mistaken, but that doesn't make them... Just because you look like a woman doesn't mean that you are a woman. You could get all the surgeries and use all the makeup, buy all the dresses or what have you, to make an appearance of a woman all you want. Doesn't make you a woman, though. just makes you someone who looks just like a woman.
Mistaken on
what
rare
you're looking
occasion.
at is secondary sex characteristics, and
Yeah.
those are things that people can
Those are the
change.
signs
So
that
to
point to the
pretend
reality
that,
of your
oh,
sex.
this is all men and women, and like, you
But
know,
I'm not
this-
saying the signs are synonymous with their sex.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying the signs are signs, and the signs symbolize something.
But there is something to say about somebody that, like you said, walks, talks, looks like a woman, and to say that this is now 100% a man. 100. No, you have to say.
No, he would be performing as a woman, and he might even fool me, depending on how much surgery
So
he's
he would
had. But
socially be a woman.
he would try to do that, but I
he
don't
would
think
not just
society should
try.
recognize
He
those
would-
He would
traits.
not
Succeed
just
to the
try.
point-
He would
yeah.
succeed
to the point where
it
you
doesn't
don't
matter.
even realize.
Yeah.
Usually you do realize is the thing. I know they
like
convince
survivor
themselves that they
bias.
really, yeah, but they, I've met plenty of transsexuals because they protest my speeches, and they, usually you can tell. Because, again, it gets to what we're talking about at the very top of this debate, which was the question of human nature, right? I think, me and old Uncle Aristotle believe that you're a body and a soul together. I'm not just my soul trapped in a useless body. I'm not just my body without a soul or totally separated from my soul. I think I'm a soul and a body together. So my body gives me much of my sex. To use the technical term, it's an inseparable accident of the individual. And I think that pertains to my whole person, because you can't separate those two, for the whole of my life.
To change
Pixie,
your body.
can men get pregnant?
Can men get pregnant? Not biological men.
Okay.
Yeah, trans men can.
Okay.
Can we really divide men up like that? Like, I'm a biological man, but I'm a spiritual woman, and I'm a...
I mean, we do, what is it? We do classifications within gender all the time. Black woman, white woman, for example.
I'm sorry. I see this woman here has a notebook. I've done a few of these, like, whatever podcast debates now, and the women on this side always have these notebooks. It doesn't seem like it helps them at all. Like, why do they bother with, like, I don't see any notebook in front of Michael Knowles, because it's pretty cut and dry. Like, you don't need notes to explain that men are men and women are women. But I'm sorry. It drives me nuts. They always come in with their notebooks, and it doesn't help them at all.
That'd be racial.
Yeah, no,
not
but that's
gender,
still within the scope of women. You're still saying, that, oh, there's women who are black, there's women who are not black. There are women who have had SA experiences, there's women who haven't had experiences.
Race is real, though it's actually more difficult to pin down than sexual difference, but it's real. Yeah, there are different races, sure.
Yeah.
So you can, black people and white people are different races, and men and women are different sexes.
Last thing
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. go ahead.
One can't become the other, except in the case of Michael Jackson, who he got the closest, but he was still, I think he was still a black guy.
Wasn't that vitiligo?
That's what he said.
Well, that's
what he said. I don't know if I believe Michael
Okay.
Jackson, because
Yeah,
he was
actually,
yeah.
you I don't want to say stumbled because that's condescending, but whatever. You stumbled onto something quite interesting.
I'm glad I did.
Because the whole idea is that when it comes to, like, the notion of race, the reason why Michael Jackson was technically never white, he was always black, is because we treat race as, like, a historical question, basically. What we're asking when we ask somebody what's your race is basically what is your ancestry, like what got you here to be here now, versus sex or gender specifically, where we treat it more of a societal conception, like what are you performing as.
Yeah, I don't treat it that way at all, and I think that I think racial difference is real. The reason Michael Jackson's black is because he did Thriller. Like, I don't think you can't really change your race. Rachel Dolezal tried, and she ruined her life.
Well, with race, it's the same thing as gender. His skin color became white, but that didn't make him a white man. That's the thing about his children. That's why people are speculating, are his children really his children? Because his children came out like light skin. And I know he had children with a white woman, but they should appear a little bit more darker than they did. It still doesn't change his genetics. If he were to actually sire children of his own with no controversies or anything, they would come out at least half black. If you were to have children with a black woman, then they would come out full black. It doesn't change his genetics. But what do you guys think about that? Sound off in the comment section below. Smash that like button if you're enjoying so far. If you like seeing Michael Knowles dominate debates against women with useless notebooks, let's continue.
But if you could, I'm kind of swarthy, right? You might think I'm like Arabic or Mexican or something, even though I'm Italian and waspy. I don't know. Waspy, which you see in the Mayflower cigar, actually. But I certainly couldn't change my sex, because the difference between a black guy and a white guy, I'm not saying there are not differences, that there are physical differences, there are cultural differences, sure, maybe, but those differences are nothing compared to the difference between a man and a woman.
Okay, the point is, I think what we're trying to get at here is that when it comes to like our conception of sex versus gender, we base our conception of gender on how somebody
Dustin
looks
Washburn donated
and acts
$200.
more than anything else.
Michael, with your talk and logic about soul and body, do you believe it's possible for the wrong soul to be placed in the wrong body?
No, because I think, following old Uncle St. Thomas Aquinas, that the sex derives mostly from the body. So it would be incoherent to say that the soul is another sex. Because if the soul were a different sex, the soul being the substantial form of the body, it would mean that men and women are different species. And men and women have a lot of differences, but we're not.
Why did God create gender dysphoria?
Dustin, thank you. Last thing on this, and I think, Pixie, you've had on your previous appearances, you've maybe had thoughts on this. And I think feminists tend to differ on this last topic that we're going to hit on when it comes to the trans discussion, sports. Do you think that there should be separation? What are your thoughts on, for example, trans women participating in women's sports?
Yeah, so I think what I've currently seen of the data and studies is that even after taking hormones and such, there might still be advantages in certain ways. So to me, it would be like, it's a theoretical question, like I would have to have more data, but basically, if it seems that some of like these biological advantages are like too high or it cannot be mitigated enough through the use of hormones and such, then yeah, it would be too much of an unfair advantage versus if the data shows otherwise, that it's like, no, actually it is like mitigated well enough. So that's my general stance on
Isn't it that aren't we just all slaves to like the data? You know, it's like, well, if the study shows,
I love the
like,
data.
Yeah, maybe, but the data are so manipulated. I mean, social scientific data, they're in a major replication crisis.
Well, if
right?
it wasn't, the scientific method is our best way to get to the truth.
Is it? I'm not sure about that.
I would say so. So I think it's the best we have. Otherwise, we just have our anecdotes and our feelings.
No,
and our
but
subjective
look,
opinions.
I'm all for empirical scientific analyses of the things that it can measure, but those are all physical things, and what we're talking about here is deeper than a physical thing, right? We're talking because we're not mere flesh. I don't think we think we're mere flesh.
Well, this is where we disagree, because we think that
you think you're just flesh?
No. We disagree on whether, like, you're like, oh, the issue here isn't the data. The data on whether this would be unfair to women is what I care about.
Well,
because if it wasn't, then I would say, yeah, they can do it.
The data on whether this is unfair to women are not going to come from some like dork economist. That those data are going to come from the reality of the different. It's going to come from natural scientists. Certainly, it's going to come from people who have an understanding of what human nature is and what justice is.
No, I don't think this is a human nature debate. I think this is about, does your muscle mass give you an advantage? And if you take hormones, it seems to not, like you said, reverse all of the advantages that you have.
How does a scientific study conclude something about fairness or justice? How do you measure justice under a
doesn't jump to that conclusion, but we use their conclusions to then make our opinions.
Oh, you're saying so you would look at a scientific survey and say, wow, that big husky dude who swam against the women, turns out he was a lot faster than all those little women, and therefore I conclude that men competing against women in a women's sport is unjust.
No, what you should do is you should be like, hey, okay, how do we realize if, like, okay, I don't know, should trans women compete with real women? I don't know. Do they have an unfair advantage by doing so?
I love that you slipped there and you said real women.
Well, biological women. Okay.
I
yeah,
love it.
biological.
No, you just accidentally said what we all know to be true. I think that makes sense.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, biological women, you could argue, are real women, but that doesn't mean trans women are not.
Which implies that the trans women are not really under the category.
They're not under the category of biological women. And
you just said they're not under the category of real women.
Okay, well, you can harp on that. My point here is
that... No, I think I'm not trying to get you. I'm just trying to point out you
the point I'm trying to make is, if I'm trying to figure out the answer to this question, and the question for me is not what is natural or what is Catholicism say, is this unfair to have trans women compete with real women? Well, I want to know, and the way to know that is to look at the science, not to just look at somebody.
How do you know what's fair and what's not fair?
In sports, to have an unfair advantage, and that you could,
yes, unfair
you'd have
things
to compare
are unfair,
the
but how do you know what is
you'd have to
unfair?
compare, like, right, like you would have to see, okay, if this is why they banned certain drugs. I don't know anything about sports. I'm assuming all this.
I'm just saying, how do you know what fairness is?
We all have, I would say that the only way you really know how fairness is that we all have kind of like we have a
conscience?
Feeling about it. That's all I can say.
Is it a feeling or is it a reasonable conscience?
You can compare averages.
You can compare averages, yeah, but also the hunch, even the idea that we all want things to be fair is like an evolutionary, in my opinion, just thing that we all kind of seem to
Michael
have,
Phelps is a faster swimmer than some. Michael Phelps is a faster swimmer than some guy we've never heard of. Mm-hmm. Does he have an unfair advantage over the guy we never heard of? They have different average swimming times. Is the average swimming time going to imply something about fairness and justice? No, you need something else to come to a conclusion about justice and fairness, and that's not going to be scientific.
Well,
it's
no,
going to be
no, we're not
philosophical
saying-
and ultimately
Yeah,
religious.
I agree. Philosophical.
Quick. Last points. Go ahead, Pixie.
I'm gonna say I do think that comparing averages does give us greater insight what's like fairness or not. So, for example, Michael Phelps competing with other Olympic swimmers is much more fair than Michael Phelps competing against like a completely average swimmer. So obviously, there's something to be said about people within like the same leagues or performing around the same level, and that's why we have like golden versus bronze versus like
Right.
silver categories.
Well, no, that would just be awards for the
Yeah,
people
no,
within
but
the
I'm
same
saying
category.
like sorry, I should have said Division 1, Division 2, Division
Sure.
3.
So you're saying people who are of the same type, it would be fair for the people of the same type to compete against each other.
Yes.
But we've already established that trans women and real women are not of the same type, so they shouldn't compete against each other.
That's why
Forget
we're-
about the averages.
That's why we're also saying that when it
And
comes to
then-
like hormones or certain supplements, if the divide gets bridged enough, then it might open to new discussion or different discussion.
So if
that's
you,
why we're
if you
saying
pump
it's
yourself full of
data-based.
enough hormones, then the trans woman who is not a real woman could become a real woman?
It's not
Afterwards?
about being a real woman because, as we said before,
I was
these are
just
not just
using-
these are not just matters of the flesh, as you stated before. A lot of this is about societal perception of what a woman is, and that goes back to like certain actions and certain looks. So in our day-to-day life, that's what we rely the concept of woman on: actions
Yeah.
and looks.
I just guess I wouldn't trust society more than I would trust objective truth.
Michael Knowles is 100% correct. These lefties, like these wackos, they always like to rely on the science because a lot of the modern day science skews in their favor because they just dismiss any science or scientists that go against what they're saying. But you don't need science to tell you this stuff. There's a reason why for ever and ever now, you have men's leagues and you have women's leagues. If there was no difference between men and women, there would be no need for separating between men and women in the first place. Men would just be able to play with the women in whatever sports, and it would be nothing. But clearly there is a physical advantage between if you're a man competing against women. And even if you are on estrogen or whatever hormones, you're still going to be bigger than the average woman. You don't need science to tell you this. It's something that we've already figured out. It's something that we're already established. And the only reason we've been having this debates or this has been a controversy the last few years is because you have politically correct liberal wackos out there who, again, it hurts some people's fifis because, oh man, but because it makes some transgender people out there really sad if they're not allowed to compete in sports against women. Well, then it became a whole debate, and that's the only reason. And then you had freaking scientists out there or data collectors out there who feel the same way, and so they skew it in the favor of the trans people. And then these people come on here and try to use the data or go to the science or whatnot. But no, we've already figured this out. We figured it out a long time ago. I'm glad Trump's back in office to set everything straight and put everything back to the way it should be and cut it out with this freaking, oh, it hurts my fifis nonsense. Michael Knowles was absolutely correct in this debate. He did not need a notebook to do so because it's just common sense. But what do you guys think? Sound off in the comment section below. Subscribe to my channel if you enjoy content like this. Smash that like button. You'll really be helping me out a lot. And if you did enjoy this clip, I got more Michael Knowles stuff and videos on my channel, along with much more that I think that you'll like.